What's going on, guys? This is Moonchild, the dude no way, and today I got a PvE build for every class that'll help you set the world ablaze. There are a bunch of perks, exotic armor pieces, and subclasses in Destiny 2 that combined together have explosive results, and in this video I'm gonna break down some insane setups for ad clear and what you should run to turn your enemies to ash. I've got something for everybody in this one. The builds we're covering are amazing for strikes, Gambit, questing, and literally anything else that's not direct boss DPS. No matter what class you are, the first thing you want to get your hands on is a Seventh Seraph Kinetic Weapon. At the time of this recording, that offers you two options you can pick between depending on your playstyle. If you like auto rifles, the Seventh Seraph Carbine is for you. If you prefer hand cannons, the Officer Revolver is going to do everything you need it to. Both of these can roll with Vorpal Weapon for extra damage to yellow bar enemies. On their own, these guns are middle-of-the-pack options, but with the power of mods, we can turn them into a top-tier pick and give them the chance to spawn a Warmind Cell on a kill. Blow these up, and everything nearby gets smacked with burst damage. And just like your dad's farts, these can clear an entire room all on their own. To make Warmind Cells better, you want to slot the mod Global Reach. This is cheap at only 1 energy, and it increases the size of the cell explosion from huge to gigantic as f***. Seriously, it's absurd how far away you can damage enemies with this on. I mean, look at it. So Warmind Cells are step 1 of becoming the absolute god of ad clear. If you hadn't guessed already, every build in this video is running a solar subclass. We're also rocking solar weapons, and this works perfectly with the new mods Elemental Armaments and Elemental Light. Elemental Armaments gives your solar weapons a stacking chance to spawn an elemental well when you get a kill. When you walk over a well that matches your subclass, you get 10% of all of your abilities back. That free grenade, melee, and class ability energy is a straight up buff to your neutral game. Elemental Light makes kills with your super spawn a well, and this is perfect because the supers in these builds are tailor-made to wipe out groups of enemies. Throw on Font of Wisdom, and now every time you pick up an elemental well, you're getting better super regen for the next 30 seconds. It says it gives you a significant increase to intellect, but what that translates to is faster supers. This lets you ignore intellect completely and put your stats where they matter more, like discipline, strength, and recovery. As soon as your super ends, you just run over one of your guaranteed wells and now it's recharging at lightning speed. If you're getting value out of this, subscribe for Destiny content in your sub box every week. The final mod we need to talk about is Wrath of Rasputin, which gives solar explosions a chance to spawn a Warmind Cell. This gives you another way to get a cell on the battlefield and actually synergizes with a ton of different options throughout the game. For example, all the builds in this video are running a Code Duello rocket launcher with the perk Lasting Impression. Normally this kind of weapon wouldn't be able to spawn a Warmind Cell, but Lasting Impression turns the rockets into a delayed solar explosion. With Wrath of Rasputin equipped, if it goes boom and takes out 3 or 4 guys, you're probably getting a Warmind Cell. But all that being said, this is one of the least important pieces of the build, so if you don't have this one, don't sweat it. Just roll with whatever you got, you're gonna be just fine. And look dude, I know this is a lot to take in, so later on I'm going to put a graphic on screen with all the mods and exotic armor pieces I'm covering today laid out in a clean, easy to read format. Screenshot it with your phone and you can check it out while you're putting yourself together. Now we're going to move on to classes, and we're starting with Titan. For my crayon-eating brethren, you want to be rolling with Bottom Tree Hammers. The reason Bottom Tree is so good is because of the perk Sol Invictus. This leaves a sunspot behind anytime you get a kill with your super or a solar ability. Sunspots deal a crazy amount of damage over time and literally just melt any yellow or red bar enemies that walk into them. When you walk through one of your sunspots, the perk Sun Warrior is going to kick in and give you a 20% damage bonus. While that buff is up, getting more kills will keep spawning more and more sunspots, and this creates a gameplay loop that leads to you spreading fire all over the map. You want to run the Phoenix Cradle exotic boots because they double the duration of the Sun Warrior buff from 5 to 10 seconds and let your allies pass through the sunspots to pick up the buff themselves. Makes sense, right? Light yourself on fire and now your bullets hit harder. This is clutch though, not only for your team dynamic of constantly having a 20% damage boost, but double Sun Warrior duration means you have plenty of time to get another kill, spawn another sunspot, and keep the chain rolling. To further that power fantasy, the absolute perfect weapon to pair with this setup is the Jotun Exotic Fusion Rifle. Jotun is the best because when combined with Wrath of Rasputin, if the explosion part of Jotun's damage snags the kill, it can spawn you a Warmind Cell. It also leaves a burning patch on the ground that damages enemies beyond the initial impact of the explosion. If Sun Warrior is up and something dies, there's a good chance you're going to spawn a sunspot too, and that kind of synergy makes Jotun the one-stop shop for Bottom Tree Hammer Titans. I call it the spicy meatball, and I didn't know it was going to be this good when I originally had the idea. This very quickly became one of my favorite loadouts in the entire game. The combo of Yotun and Sunspots is crazy fun and dummy effective. You literally just burn everything. It's so good I took it into PvP. The Elemental Well mods didn't work, but I was mopping the floor with lobbies. I was really surprised, and that's 100% the reason Titans got featured first today. It's just so good, dude. You gotta try it. When you use Super, if you do it on the ground, it drops a Sunspot at your feet. While you're standing in one, it costs less Super energy to throw a hammer. So after you pop, throw your first hammer and advance Sunspot to Sunspot through the group of enemies. Try not to throw too many while you're in between so you can take full advantage of how good Sunbreaker is at clearing groups. It's nasty. And if you have Wrath of Rasputin on, every hammer kill has a chance to make a Warmind Cell. And don't forget, when your super ends, go pick up your Elemental Well to get it charging back up fast. Next we're gonna talk Warlocks, and when it's time to burn this motherfucker down, my dress-wearing homies should look no further than Bottom Tree Dawnblade. This subclass was notorious in the early years of Destiny 2, but even after many a round of balance tuning, it's still got one of the best supers in the entire game for ad clear. The perk Everlasting Flame gives you your super energy back for everything you kill. Keep slaying out and you can make this thing last so long it'll make Behemoth Titans cry in a corner. It's absolutely disgusting, but the subclass doesn't offer much to buff your neutral game, and that's where the exotic armor comes in. The Sunbracers give you an on-demand way of getting 4 to 5 solar grenades back to back. All you have to do is get a kill with a charged melee. To do that easily, find yourself a red bar, put in a shot or two, and then slap them in the teeth. On the left side of your screen, you'll see a buff called Sunbracers Ready, and you have 5 seconds to throw a solar grenade and activate the perk. As soon as it leaves your hand, your grenade is going to instantly refill, and if you spam the button, you can chuck 5 in a row. You know in movies when people aren't where they're supposed to be, and all of a sudden the doors lock and the room fills with fire? That's you. That's literally how fast it happens. You get 1 melee kill, and 5 seconds later, everything's an inferno. It feels awesome. But one thing you want to keep in mind is that multiple grenades damage doesn't stack on a single target. Yeah, you heard that bullshit right. If you hit a guy with 3 grenades all around him, he's only going to take damage from 1, so do your best to spread them out wherever you see enemies. If you have an arc pair of Sunbracers, you can slot the mod Momentum Transfer, and now each time your grenade ticks, it'll shave a bit of time off your melee cooldown. Mine were solar. I didn't have arc ones unless I pulled them from collections, so, you know, rip the dream. For your exotic weapon, it's time to bust out Tiku's Divination. With this bow, the hipfire auto targets up to 3 enemies, and if they have a red box around them, you don't even have to be looking at them for the shot to hit. The tracking is pretty extreme, and if you follow up with an aim down sight shot, any target primed by the hipfire arrow is going to explode and take his buddies with him. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck with this weapon, because aside from the AoE damage, the 2-shot combo hits as hard as most special weapons. For that reason, I don't recommend you run one with this setup. Stick to your 7th Seraph Kinetic, because in big rooms full of enemies, a Warmind Cell is going to do a lot more work than Tiku can. This combo's sick, and it covers all your ranges. If targets are spread apart or far away, you know the bow is still able to damage them. If a lot of dudes are grouped up, you can fish for a Warmind Cell and blow them all to hell. And speaking of, if you have Wrath of Rasputin slotted, the wave of fire that comes from your Dawnblade swords, as well as the explosion at the end of your melee, the explosion from Tiku's Divination, and the one from Phoenix Dive while you're in your super, all of them can spawn a Warmind Cell. And that's just nuts. Again, this mod is not required. You can still do pretty much everything this build focuses on without it, but if you do have it, goddamn do you get a lot of cells. The way the subclass buffs the super, and the exotic armor and weapon buff the neutral game creates a perfect yin and yang effect. The working parts together makes for one of the most powerful and well-rounded setups in the game. Honestly, I forgot how good Bottom Tree Dawnblade is. It's been a year or so since I last messed with it, and then I ended up having so much fun I had to force myself off it to go get footage for the other characters. It's really strong, and it's not stasis, which low-key is kind of refreshing. Now we're going to talk about Hunters, and my flippy boy Pyromaniacs want to run Middle Tree Gunslinger. This subclass's melee throws 3 knives that burn the target on a hit, but if you get a kill, the perk Playing with Fire kicks in and makes it recharge faster. This can stack up to 3 times, and without ever pushing your strength stat, this buff gives you your melee back in about 5 seconds. You know the saying, cut like a hot knife through butter? You're the hot knife. And when you pair this with Gambler's Dodge, you've got a melee for basically any situation. But why is this good? Because you're gonna slot hands-on in your helmet. You can get up to 3 kills per melee, and with a charge coming up every 5 or so seconds, that's a ton of super. Everything you see is gonna have a flaming knife sticking out of it, and you'll get into the rotation of taking a few shots, throwing a melee, taking a few more shots, and so on. To carry on with that gameplay loop, we're using the exotic armor Shards of Galanor. When you cast Blade Barrage, if you get a few kills or just a lot of tags, you're gonna get a bunch of super back after it ends. How much? Up to 50%. And it hits hard. It'll wipe out an entire group of majors, no problem, and then you're already halfway to another one. Combine that with the unique gameplay style this subclass encourages, and you're looking at about a minute and a half between supers. 90 seconds. And that's not even counting the extra regen from picking up an elemental well. Once you start doing it, you're gonna be hooked. It's like a totally different way to play the game, and it's fun, and it's effective. How fast can you get your super becomes a mini game in and of itself. For your exotic weapon, we're sticking with Tiku's Divination. This bow is amazing, for all of the reasons I've already mentioned, but with this style of play, it fits perfectly in between melees. With a 3-time stack of playing with fire, in between melee cooldowns, you have enough time to shoot 3 volleys, and just as the 3rd set of arrows leaves the string, your knife comes back up. This means you have time to hip fire prime 3 guys, detonate 2, and then chuck another handful of blades. As you get used to it, this becomes a really fluid gameplay loop. It's endless. You can literally do it forever with enough enemies. The number of supers you get is astronomical, and apparently they're solar explosions, so with Wrath of Rasputin on, every kill has a chance to spawn a Warmind Cell. It may not have a damage buffing exotic like Celestial Nighthawk, but Blade Barrage is still one of the best supers for shutting down a tough target. Even in PvP, it still melts. Speaking of, turns out a lot of people have been looking to improve their game in the Crucible. For you guys, I'm going to break down some strategies that'll help you make better decisions in PvP, and all you gotta do is click the card on the right. Thanks for watching. I am Moonchild of Dude No Way, and I will see you in the next video.